Call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mark.
Here.
Cindy.
Here.
Bob.
Here.
Nancy.
Yes.
Kurt.
Here.
John.
Excused.
Jay.
He will be a little bit late. He said about quarter after or so. So we'll continue without him until he shows up. Now it's time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, that brings us to approval of the meeting minutes. Need a motion to approve the minutes from the January 5th, 2015 meeting.
I'll move.
Second. Then moved by Member Lagadaka, seconded by Member Lynn to approve the meetings of the minutes of the meeting of January 5th, 2015. Is there any changes, or all those in favor say aye? Aye. Aye. Okay, it passes unanimously. Does anybody have any amendments for this evening's meeting agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I move to do the meeting as it is.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Lagadakis to approve this evening's meeting agenda. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we'll go forward with the meeting agenda as presented. There's no public hearings or bid awards tonight. Generally, there would be on the second reading of an ordinance, but we're going to postpone that till the third reading. Is there any visitors' views related to tonight's agenda? Yes, Dave.
Yes, I'd like to.
Yep. Please step to the mic and state your name and who you represent.
Dave Kensinger, myself, and I'm sorry I was unable to attend your meeting in December when you were discussing the purchase of the property at Papke's. But I think that's very important for you guys to do on many levels. I've lived out in that area and used Papke's for over 30 years now, so I've seen quite the evolution of uses over it. But it's used by a surprisingly large number of people, and surprisingly, very few of them live in the Papke's area. Most of the people that utilize that facility either are from Service Area 1 or town, and the residents out there. But I think the thing that's very interesting that's happened over the last 10 years is extensive use of the lodges. There's 3 lodges right across there, and they have a very extensive use of that. They run all their passengers, or excuse me, all of their customers back and forth across that facility. Also, during the past logging sale that was conducted out there, that facility was used extensively by, and has over the years, whenever there's been a logging sale on Kupernoff Island, by the crews that are working in that area. The dock is also used for a lot of people. I don't necessarily know if it's a good thing, but a lot of people, when they, particularly crabbers, they don't want to come all the way into town, but they want to go visit their family, they'll park their boats there overnight and have somebody pick them up there and not run all the way into town with their boat. So it's used by a surprising number of people. And it's a mess there, and it has been for years because of all the conflicting land uses that you guys are all aware of. And I think adding one more mix of a bunch of private land in that area would just be a disaster. Maybe not now, but I guarantee at some point in that future, that's a very important access point to land that the borough could possibly select down the Narrows. There's some very desirable parcels down there that the Land Selection Committee is looking at that would be good for future housing development. The current people that live out there right now, there's not that many people that actually live out there, but there's a lot of houses that are out there, and they all need access. And it's, to me, just seeing the uses of it, and one of the main benefits from a person outside of the old city of Petersburg, advantage of joining the borough was that we needed a government entity like the borough that can deal with mental health, DNR, the state, the Forest Service is out of it now, but all these government agencies. They don't like to talk to somebody like me. They will, but they don't really want to. But we need somebody like you, the borough, to do this. And that was one of the compelling reasons for me to support the formation of the borough, was because there's some things the government does do better, and this is one of them. And so I'd strongly recommend that you purchase the property at Papke's, just to prevent more continuing mess and nightmare in the land area out there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any other visitors tonight with views related to items on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none. Any visitors' views unrelated to tonight's agenda? Seeing none. We'll move to board, commission, and committee reports. I don't see any listed there. That brings us to the consent agenda. The only item there is a local acknowledgement of 2015 gaming permit applications for the Petersburg Rod and Gun Club and the Petersburg Little League. I'd entertain a motion to approve those gaming permits.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by member Walhooter, seconded by member Lynn to approve the applications for these gaming permits. Is there any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Nancy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes.
Okay, it passes 6-0 or 5-0. Math's off here. Mayor's report. Pretty short. We need to set meeting dates and times for February. There's going to be a lot of people traveling. I know Cindy, Bob, and I will all be out of town from the 16th, I believe, till the 18th. Or actually, you don't get back until the 1st when I get
25th.
March. Anyway, so maybe we'll only have one meeting in March. Nancy's going to be gone for both meetings, she said. Monday the 2nd would be the first meeting at noon. So I talked to Kathy about it today, so if that's all right with the assembly, we'll...
Wait, the first meeting in February is the 2nd?
That's if I look on the calendar. Yeah, that's the
Oh, I
first
will
Monday.
be here for that, I guess.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay, well, that's the first meeting,
Sorry.
possibly the only meeting, because most of us will be gone. So, with that, let me get my way back to the agenda here. Got a letter today from our attorney, Jim Brennan. The court ruled on the Ellingstad Treem property on Wrangell Avenue in favor of the borough. The court recognized that I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's available to anybody who wants to get it. The court recognized that there was substantial evidence to support the Assembly's decision. Because the court denied the owner's appeal, the Assembly's December 5th, 2013 order is in effect. This required that the owners both demolish the building and also remove the building and other debris from the owner's property and dispose of them at the expense of the building owners. I therefore recommend that the manager or I, the owner, or I send the owners a notice to complete the removal of the materials by a stated date. Failure of which will trigger removal of the materials by the borough, a motion to the court to hold the owners in contempt, or both. I will also be preparing a motion for attorney fees and costs, so a little long overdue, but that's been settled. And that's all I have for the mayor's report, and I asked Kathy if she would go over the manager's report for us this evening. And just for the record, Mr. Greger's here. So.
Yes, I am.
Okay, we will be delivering the borough budget for the 2015-16 year to the Assembly by February 2nd, and we're hoping to schedule budget review meetings later that week. At this time, we are recommending a special meeting with an agenda that gives the Assembly and the community an overall of the budget, and then gives the Assembly the opportunity to formally request additional meetings if the Assembly wants to review specific departments in more detail. If everything goes as planned, we would expect to have the first reading of the budget ordinance in March. The ad hoc committee assigned by the Assembly to pursue the herbicide issue met and is working with Jonathan Christ Tompkins' office to pursue legislative support on the issue. His office is in the process of checking with the state's legal representation to get a ruling on the ability of local municipalities to restrict actions by a state agency on this issue. We have also asked Johnson's office to include whether local land use zoning ordinances can address this issue. More information to follow as we hear back from our representative. And I believe we've got some information from the senator or the representative, which got forwarded on to the Assembly today. All of the environmental research and sampling has been completed at the former Metcalf Sales Building. DEC has reviewed sampling and testing information and has agreed to allow the borough to demolish the structure and concrete slab and pave the site without removal of any soils. Public Works will plan on raising the building this spring or summer. PIA assisted with sidewalk snow removal during the last snow event, and they did a great job. Their help was appreciated by the streets crew and the public. The South Nordic Haugen Drive project has bid. Initial results show Seacon out of Juneau to be the apparent low bidder with a bid that was very close to the project estimate. Seacon shows at least 2 local construction companies on their subcontractor list. The project will commence in the spring of 2015. John Painter, School District Technology Director, and 4 of his students, Maria Taylor, Isabel Vitt, Ben Zerlinko, and Skipper Erickson, have completed a commingled recycling video that will help to explain the current Blue Bag program to our citizens and customers. The video is very informative, and the students did an excellent job. Big thanks to the school district for their outstanding work on this. The video will be posted on our website and a link sent out in utility bills. Chris has issued comments to DNR concerning the North End Ferry Authority's NEFA application for use of Banana Point launch ramp. We continue to request that NEFA provide some preventive erosion measures around the launch ramp planks, placement of shock rock to prevent erosion from crop wash, and that they provide an adequate amount of funding in an escrow account to act as an emergency maintenance account on the ramp if damage is caused by their operation. Kent Miller of NEFA reiterated to Public Works last week that the authority will be performing the preventative measures at the ramp and will also establish the escrow account prior to operations commencing in May of 2015. Officer Pop has kicked off annual DARE classes. The program is off to a great start. Police Department, Jail, and Municipal Building Renovation Project continues. Architects met with staff on January 8th and 9th. Final conceptual drawings were received, hoping to present a final drawing to the Assembly for comment in March. State troopers have announced we've been approved by the Turax project and that the state will fund the project. Turax will allow officers to issue citations and crash reports electronically from patrol vehicles. Each officer will be issued a state laptop. Each vehicle will be equipped with a printer, scanner, and pedestal. At the completion of the project, electronic citation and crash information will be transmitted via automation to our records management system and court systems for processing. Heroin overdose that required rescue breathing by Sergeant Kerr. Subject was resuscitated and is doing well. Abandoned vehicles on borough property are being addressed. Officers are working with registered owners to have the vehicles voluntarily moved. Citations may be issued and vehicles impounded if need be. Working on converting harbor billing data to new software. Currently attaching specific harbor rates to stall locations, keeping Anna quite busy. The assessor will be here in Petersburg February 17th to go over any parcels that need to be reviewed. Our volunteer members of the fire and EMS areas are lower than we would like. These groups are actively recruiting new members. There is a firefighter 1 class scheduled to begin on February 14th, but the basic EMT class has not been scheduled due to lack of applicants. So far, all but 2 drive-down float sections have arrived, and Tamco is bolting them together at their facility in Scow Bay. The transfer bridge came through on the AML barge and was scheduled for placement last Friday. Rock and Road was scheduled to pour the concrete slab at the approach apron and is finishing up placing armor rock along the edges. Bear Electric continues to work on the Upland electric hookups and is waiting for ramp and float placement. Maximum Performance has given a cost estimate of $30,000 to $33,000 for the small crane rebuild and estimates it will take 12 to 14 working days to do the work. We gave them the go-ahead to get this started in hopes that the completion date gives us time to ship back to Petersburg and install prior to the busy gear transfer between Tanner Crab and Long Lining. Heads up to the public, the Coast Guard will be available for the annual commercial fishing dockside safety exams February 2nd through 6th. Sign up at the harbor office. We're checking on purchasing new chemical controls for Aquatic Center in hopes to cut down on the cost of CO2. The HAVAC system has been having issues with air leaks, has been causing cool showers in a cooler than usual building, trying to identify where the leaks are occurring and what is causing the issues. The library's new online events calendar has been launched. The community can now register and pay for classes on the library's website. And the deadline for submission for library landscaping project is January 30th at 2 p.m. The complete document can be downloaded from the borough's website.
Thank you, Kathy, for reading the manager's report this evening. That brings us to unfinished business. And first item under that is ordinances for second reading. That's ordinance 2014-20, an ordinance providing parking regulations and fines for parking violations and repealing the remaining chapters of the old city code. I'll entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2014-20 in its second reading. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
No, second it.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Lagadakis, seconded by Member Walhuter to adopt ordinance 2014-20 in its second reading. Discussion?
I have a question.
Okay.
1112-040, section C. No person shall park a vehicle in a commercial parking lot. Commercial parking lot as used in this paragraph means an area devoted to parking space for the accommodation of vehicles of customers of a nearby business and which has been posted by the business owner or person in control thereof. Do they have to own the parking, or can they just go out and put a sign up and say, I control this?
Kelly, could you answer that?
That would be on property that they owned or were responsible for if they leased it. If you look further down to 11-12-50, that may, those would be zones that we would establish on borough property for loading and unloading freight and passengers. But those commercial lots would be lots that they owned or leased.
What about lots that they don't own, but they've posted signs on saying that they're...
It wouldn't apply to this ordinance.
Will we be removing those signs, or are they, I'm confused about this. Because this looks like it's okay to do that.
Well, I think the intent was to not have vehicles abandoned in the parking lots of businesses. Some of the issues we've had in the past have been abandoned vehicles in churches, church parking lots, and the intent was to prevent that sort of activity. But, a private company or business could not establish a no parking area on borough property, if that's what you're asking.
Would you see how the wording could be changed to make it?
No, I see how some signs probably need to be taken down.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't.
I wanted to make sure that somebody can't just go out and do it.
Now, if the signs were posted on their property that were facing borough property, I don't know that we could prevent them from posting those signs, but we couldn't enforce them either. Does that answer it?
No, I'm still confused about the situation.
Is there any more discussion on the, Bob?
Yeah.
I know you had a concern.
Well, I have a
Did
couple
you?
concerns,
Yeah.
and I'll let Kelly talk to them, but there's two of my sieves that this doesn't pass. One is the fact that I don't see a need for this outside of Service Area 1 because as it is. And two is that we had discussions here a while back about not enforcing anything outside of, or not doing anything outside of Service Area 1 that wasn't done before borough formation. And this would, so there would be no enforcement outside of Service Area 1, although we want to make this area wide. And I would move that we restrict it only to Service Area 1 at this point. For the two reasons. One, I don't believe it's needed out there, and two is that it will never be enforced. So why put something into effect that we're not going to enforce?
Okay, Kelly, do you, is that the way this ordinance is written, is for it's going to be borough-wide?
It is, Mr. Mayor. The initial traffic ordinance that was passed last January was also a borough-wide ordinance. What this ordinance does is it adds Petersburg-specific regulations that were in the old code to the new code to keep that consistency. So we're not planning on providing any extended police services outside Service Area 1, but if we are outside of Service Area 1 for a business purpose, it would allow us to address violations of the ordinance. Many of these rules and regulations already are in state law, and we have the authority to enforce those state laws and administrative codes. So, for instance, if guys are out on Forest Service patrol as part of that contractual obligation we have, they could write a borough ordinance citation for a violation, and the borough would collect that money rather than writing a state violation where the money would go to the state. So I don't see a lot of violations outside Service Area 1 for this specific update. The initial update that was approved last January, I could see some of those.
Okay, does that help explain anything, Bob? Do you still?
I still have my concerns. I don't disagree with the need for the rule, not at all. That wasn't mine. I'm just saying how if we're going to have a rule enforced, then I think people ought to know, yes, it's going to be enforced. If we don't intend to enforce it, I just don't think we ought to put it in an area we don't intend to enforce it. That's my thinking anyhow.
Kurt?
Mayor, in all due respect, Bob, I think if we do decide to purchase some property out at Pappy's Landing, there seems to be a real parking issue out there right now.
Yeah.
And so, it'd be nice if we had some teeth that we could go out there, and we've contacted right now the owners to move their vehicles, and if they don't move them, well, then we can just cite them and then at their expense, remove their vehicle. Right now, we don't have any teeth to do that. And so, all due respect, I'd rather just leave it in instead of, make it borough-wide.
Yeah. Well, we already have that in effect, as I see it, with the other ordinance, not with this one, not with this particular one. And I've also, talked to both the city manager and so forth, and about those vehicles out there. And unless the people in Service Area 2 are willing to pay for another patrolman, we obviously aren't going to enforce it, or are willing to pay more taxes out there. That's what I've been told and the way I understand it from our discussion here the last few weeks. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's where it is.
Any other discussion? Any other comments? Jay?
Where is Service Area 2?
There isn't a Service Area 2, I don't think.
Oh, I call it anything outside. I was calling it that. All right, I'm wrong. Nancy,
Okay.
it's
Jay?
A point of clarification from Member Lynn. Besides being superfluous, meaning why have the language in there if we're not going to enforce it? What downside do you see to leaving the language in there besides that?
I guess I don't see any downside. So you make a good point.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jay. Kurt, did you have another comment?
Just a follow-up and a clarification here. Kelly, we already have an ordinance that takes care of the parking problem out in Pappy's, or because I wasn't here for the last few weeks, so maybe you can bring me up to speed real quickly if you could.
We had adopted last January a fairly broad traffic ordinance that aligned us with state codes, and that's pretty commonplace across the state. And that ordinance was an area-wide ordinance. So if we were outside Service Area 1 and needed to address an issue, we could address an issue under the borough regulations and collect that fine rather than the state regulations where the money went to them. We have statutory authority to enforce any kind of state law or administrative code anywhere in the state. We could go to Papke's and write tickets if we wanted to, but our primary area of responsibility is limited to Service Area 1. So we don't have any plans to expand that service unless that's what the citizens want and the assembly approves. If we're going to do that on an ongoing basis, we need to probably look at some staffing studies and cost of doing business. So it's, yes, we could. No, there are no plans to do it.
Does that answer?
Yeah, and then one follow-up, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor. And so, does it tie your hands at all to say this is only good for Service Area 1, like Mr. Lynn would like to say? Or as Jay says, just leave it as is? I mean, what's your choice?
I don't think it ties our hands, but I like being consistent, and it would be consistent with the other traffic ordinance that has already passed. And, while we're dealing with this borough transition, it also helps, I think, to take care of these things now. In the event those other service areas are added, we don't have to go back and revamp these ordinances later.
Cindy?
Just a quick question, Clay. If you were out on patrol or your force was out on patrol with the Forest Service, do they ever make a swing by of Papke's? And if we pass this ordinance, might they write a ticket for the borough as opposed to the state while they were out there?
They certainly could. I don't know that they ever have
Okay.
Driven through there. I would suspect that there are times where, there has been some sort of law enforcement action out there. They may be looking for somebody to do follow-up or those sorts of things. And they certainly could write those tickets, but the likelihood of them doing it is pretty small.
Okay. Any other questions? Seems to me like the way it's written is kind of following along with what we passed last January, so I don't see any problem with it. And another issue is that it's going to have a public hearing on the third reading, and we have one more time to bring it up and discuss it if anybody else, from the public comes forward with any problems with the way it's written. So, is there any more discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Kurt,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes.
And Jay.
Yeah, can I vote
Oh,
too?
and Jason.
Okay, it passes. Ordinance 2014-20 passes unanimously, 6-0 in its second reading. Excuse me. Now that brings us to new business. First reading of ordinance 2015-01, an ordinance providing for a joint Thomas Bay Power Advisory Committee with Wrangell. And the short title is the first reading. I'll entertain a motion to adopt 2015-01 in its first reading.
I'll second.
Been moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Lagadakis to adopt ordinance 2015-01 in its first reading. Any discussion? One thing I noticed reading through this, if I could find my note I made, powers and duties. It seems like, well, I guess the Wrangell already passed this in their first reading, the way it's written, and so I guess it doesn't really hurt, but it looks like it gives, if we designate a committee, the assemblies designate a committee to study, or here it says study and make recommendations to the borough assemblies and SEPA on design, reconstruction, or improvement of the hydroelectric power known as Tyee Lake Hydroelectric Project. So it just identifies the northern one, which makes sense. That's what Thomas Bay Power Authority did before, but it seems like a pretty, it seems like we're getting back into double forms of government in a way, like the SEPA board already does that. That's what we hired the SEPA board for. Is there a reason it was written this way, is my question.
The reason why there is an ordinance is there's some assembly members in Wrangell that would like to keep it in ordinance form, so we know we have it, and the
Okay.
communities will keep working together. It's been written pretty much where it's strictly an advisory committee anymore.
Right.
They don't have any authorities like they
Right.
did before. And they don't exist until you guys give them a job to do.
Right. So, with that being said, I don't really see the problem, but I just wanted to bring that up, that it seems like it's kind of giving the committee, if we form one, the same duties that SEPA already does. But I guess we could direct them in a specific direction, so.
As we were first looking at this, I had a question too about whether that could be used for other purposes. In other words, if we chose to use it to look at some other hydroelectric project which may not involve Wrangell or something else, is what my thinking was at the time. And I proposed some wording that would change that, but Wrangell was not in favor of that. They wanted it such that the two communities were joint. Am I saying that correctly?
We did agree to have the joint ordinance, just like we did before when we had Thomas Bay Power Authority. I just wanted to discuss that a little bit. Okay, Cindy?
Just to clarify, though, the language does say they could investigate other projects.
Yeah, that got changed after that, our
Yeah.
discussion, a little bit, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can I
Yes.
make a point too? If this ordinance does pass, we will have to have a charter amendment on this coming October's ballot, because our charter actually calls for a charter for Thomas Bay Power.
Okay.
So
That's
if
good to
this
know.
passes, there will be a question to amend the charter just to get rid of it.
Okay, thanks. So I just wanted to bring that up. Any other discussion on this ordinance 2015-1? Clerk call the roll.
Kurt,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
and Mark.
Yes. So ordinance 2015-01 passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda is ordinance 2015-02. An ordinance providing for a farm property tax exemption and submitting the ordinance to the voters. And this is the first reading. I'll entertain a motion to adopt this in its first reading.
So moved.
I'll
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's been moved by member Gregor and seconded by member Lynn to adopt ordinance 2015-02 in its first reading. Any discussion? It just basically exempts people that have farmland that 10% of their income comes from, or over 10%, or?
Yeah, that's in a nutshell. Just as it reads, it's pretty straightforward in state statute. And our own borough currently would only impact one local producer. I stress the word currently, but currently would only impact Farragut Farm. And in speaking with Jody, in terms of cost to the borough, it'd be in the hundreds, not thousands of dollars range. As of
Actually, less than $100.
Oh.
and
Although the flower farm might take advantage of this. I don't know if they'd be able to, but probably.
I have a
Bob?
question. Would this also apply to marijuana production?
the way, Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure. Yeah,
The way I currently read it, yes. As although I imagine the state attorney is going to be weighing in on that at some point, but
I asked the state assessor this, Mr. Mayor, sorry. I asked the state assessor this morning, and I talked with our attorney, and she said, yes, it would, as it's read now.
Nancy?
And my research into hemp production, it's my understanding that when you're a hemp producer, you harvest it and let it lay in the field and to dry. It's called retting, R-E-T-T-I-G, retting, and it lays there. And while it sounds like the soil around here is good for hemp, the environment doesn't necessarily allow it to dry. So if somebody wanted to go into hemp production, they'd have to have a fairly large building to dry it in. And then it might come into money, lost money that way. Plus, I'm wondering how long it would take before the fishermen decide they want a House Bill 40 of their own to exempt their warehouses, and this slippery slope would expand.
Yeah, I don't know. Any other, Jay? You look like you
no, go ahead,
have come.
Cindy.
A
Cindy,
couple
have-
thoughts on that. One is that farmers have to have and dedicate a fair amount of land to be able to produce, which is a little bit different than fishing. And the other thing is that I think that the value of buildings is going to be negligible compared to the value of marijuana if production ever did get going in the county, if we base it on what's been happening in Washington and Colorado. So either way, I'm not too concerned about the language in this. I think it's a good idea.
Cannabis
Nancy?
production, it doesn't take as much cannabis to make 10% of your income as it does. Hemp would require greater. Hemp is a totally different thing. So if hemp could be produced here, and from my research, it looks like the soil, it doesn't like clay soil, it likes peat soil, which we have abundant amounts of, and it does well in ditches. So I see a great.
Would you propose an amendment to the?
I have no idea. I just think that it's something we need to be cognizant of.
Okay.
That it's not just Farragut Farms.
Currently,
Potentially.
maybe it is, I guess. But Jay, did you have another comment?
Just, I guess, one last thought on it, or I guess two. One is not to speak for commercial fishermen, but I imagine they wouldn't want the term farmer associated with them, or fish farmers. Food for thought. But beyond that, in 2014, we had several ballot measures on the docket to increase tax revenues for the borough, and I look forward to giving him an opportunity to minimally lower tax revenues for the borough. Flip side of the coin, I guess. And I look forward to hearing public input from the community during this time.
Okay, yeah, we will have the second reading of this ordinance, which will be at the first meeting in February. We'll have public comment and a public hearing, I should say. And then, so is there any more discussion on ordinance 2015-02 in its first reading? Kurt?
I have some concerns, but I think I'm going to go ahead and vote for this anyway, and see where it happens we're in February, where things kind of land. I mean, let's get some input from the public and see what they think.
If we're concerned about, well, we know marijuana is going to be legal to possess soon. We don't know what, we're going to discuss it later in this meeting, what we think the borough's direction should be. I mean, if you read the news from around the state, there's all kinds of different ideas, so we'll get to that later. But I could see where if someone did have a marijuana growing operation, and, well, I guess if it was over 10% of their yearly gross, then they'd have to pay taxes on it, the way this is written. Is that correct?
Right, and I have
Yeah.
no problem with this. I'm going to vote for this, but I just think that we need to point out that Farragut Farms isn't the only potential
Okay.
outfit that'll be affected.
Oh, absolutely. In the long view, that can impact many businesses. Absolutely.
So everybody who's got a greenhouse stands to, because it won't take much. Well, it wouldn't take much for it to be 10% of my income.
Yeah, so, anyway, any more discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Nancy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and Cindy.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2015-02 passes in its first reading. Now we have a resolution, it's 2015-01 before us. It's supporting enactment of healthy forests, timber reform legislation that would expand local timber economies. I'll entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2015-01.
I so move.
Second.
Moved by member Lagadakis, seconded by member Walher to, adopt resolution 2015-01. And from what I get out of the reading, this is basically, it's just asking the federal government to reinstate secure rural schools. Is there any other discussion? Any discussion on the resolution?
On the second paragraph there, where in the last sentence where it talks about of the 1990s as well as indirect payment that came from the Forest Service, it was tied to 25% of the timber receipts. That the PILT fund went farther than timber receipts. It also included receipts from other things too, and come from the BLM, come from Park Service, and so forth. And I would, to make it absolutely correct, I would propose that we'd say there that came from the payment in lieu of taxes funding. And what the intent was with the secure rural funds is to offset, because there was such a gigantic decrease in payments from the timber receipts, The secure real funds was to offset that for a period of time, is what it was intended for. Offset the PILT payments because they were so low.
So what language do you propose
I would just,
changing?
okay, on the, on there,
The second
the
whereas?
second, yeah, it says that came from, and I would delete the Forest Service that was tied to the 25% funds. I would say from the payment in lieu of taxes funding, and just put a, and then go on and.
So we're pretty positive that is the
Well,
correct.
yeah, yes, I am.
Kathy, do we need to make a motion to, I mean,
If you're
amendment to?
satisfied with that, that's fine.
Okay. Is the Assembly satisfied with the wording change Member Lynn proposes? Okay. Any other discussion on Resolution 2015-01?
There's just one little typo.
Clerk call, what's, Cindy, you have something?
There's one little typo.
Oh. Run it through word check or something. The clerk call the roll on Resolution 2015-01?
Cindy,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Bob.
Yes,
Okay, it passes 6-0. Okay, Resolution 2015-02, a resolution authorizing participation in the Mental Health Trust Land Office's winter land sale for property located at Papke's Landing. I'd entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2015-02.
So move.
second.
Motion's been made by Member Walrider, seconded by Member Lynn to adopt Resolution 2015-02. Discussion. Nancy.
I can't support this until Papke's Landing. I can't support anything, the borough getting involved in anything at Papke's Landing until Papke's Landing is in a service area. Either Service Area 1 or its own service area.
Okay.
I think that the wrong question was that we shouldn't have asked, should we acquire these 3 lots? I think we should have asked, how much do you want your taxes to go up so we can acquire these 3 lots?
Okay. Actually, before us tonight, I think there's 7 lots in the CDUC subdivision. Our mission tonight, if we do pass this resolution, is decide which ones, if any of them, we want to, buy and to what amount. So, any more comments on Resolution 2015-02?
Sure.
Jay?
My 2 cents, I actually don't see this as a service area issue. I think this is a place that all members of the community use and enjoy. Similarly to Banana Point, I think we've received a lot of feedback from the community, both inside Service Area 1 and out, and overwhelmingly it's been in favor. I think acquiring these properties is part of a long-term vision. We all know there's so many people with their hands in the various plays. I won't rehash it all again, the float, the launch, etc. I see this as the least expensive first step for the long-term vision of Papke's Landing. Does that mean anything's going to happen on that in the short run? Probably not. I think I stress the term long-term on that. It's got to start somewhere. And I guess there's a bookend to it all. If we acquire these properties and in the long run decide that nothing's going to happen out at Papke's, that DNR, etc., doesn't want to get involved, then we get rid of them. I don't see us taking a bath financially on this thing, so I hope the Assembly moves to go for it, because I think it's a good move for us at this point. Good first step.
Okay,
My 2
thanks.
cents.
Jay, Bob, do you have a comment?
Well, I have a couple points. One of them is that if you go back and look at the right-of-way that goes down to Papke's Landing, it goes back to the 1940s. That original road down there was put in the 1940s. It has a right-of-way, state right-of-way on it. It goes all the way to the dock, all the way down to that where the dock currently is there. And so I think it's part of the infrastructure of this whole area. I mean, it's been there, it's been used. And I would share that that's not just outside of Service Area 1 issue. I'd say that's part of the total infrastructure for the area. The second point I'd make on it is the point that Mr. Wagner made. He was talking about access to those lots from the road, from either the parking lot or the road there. And I went back and looked at what Mental Health Trust put in there. And Mental Health Trust said that you could go ahead, whoever bought those bottom lots, 5, 6, and 7, could get access could apply for access from the parking lots. When you look at 7, I believe it is, which is the corner lot, that would take out, any of those would take out at least a fourth to a third of the parking and that's currently there, as I read it, if they were to apply and get it. The lot 7 does not have any internal access, so it would have to be accessed from the road. And so that would take out all that parking on the end of it that's currently there. And I would hope that I'm the same place Jay is that I don't see a downside. If we purchase it, we could always sell it.
Okay, any other assembly members have a comment? I was seeing no other comments by any other assembly members. I'll just state how I feel. I was kind of on the fence with this, knowing that, or not knowing what the state's going to do. Well, one, we don't know where our northern boundary is, so we don't know if we're going to, what kind of an offer we're going to get from the state, because one of the potential 3 harbors is in Hobart Bay, Entrance Island. And the conversation we had with the DOT was, well, that was when they still had some money. And they didn't know what they were going to give us for money to repair them. So we didn't know what kind of state of we would be in to repair the Papke's dock. But seeing how we've had a pretty long public comment period, and we had 13 letters, 11 of them were for purchase of it, and 2 were against, and many of those people were from inside Service Area 1. And then we had a public comment tonight by Dave Kinsinger that's in favor of it. And I agree with Jay, it's a good first step. If we do decide to bid on these, if we are fortunate to get them, I guess if, that's what we're after, then we'd be fortunate if we got them. Then if we didn't use them, if we didn't get the land from the state, the dock and the ramp and whatnot, then you sell them. So I don't see it as a great loss, especially with the public comment we've had to pursue them. So I will be voting in favor of this resolution. Cindy?
The borough manager also, in conversations with him, said, yes, we could also divide those lots and have them replatted if we only wanted a portion of that to expand the parking lot. So just because we buy a whole lot doesn't mean it would have to stay in that size and configuration.
Okay. Nancy?
The last time I talked to the city manager, he didn't sound like he was in favor of purchasing these lots. He doesn't, it's my understanding, he doesn't see the, it'll just be more pressure for the borough to go out and clear the derelict vehicles and boat trailers and things that are abandoned there, is my understanding.
Yeah. I haven't looked at I've looked at the map. I haven't went out and, trying to figure out where the lots are, but I think they're all undeveloped, aren't they?
They're all undeveloped.
All on the upper side of the road, so.
If I can respond
Sure.
to Nancy. I'm not implying that Steve was in favor of it. I think he has concerns because of the mixed ownership out there. But we lose the opportunity if we don't act now.
Well,
And as Jay said,
it's an opportunity.
if we decide that it's something that we can't undertake, we can sell those lots.
Right, I don't want my taxes to go up. I'm already paying for a library that everybody uses for free.
Okay, we're getting a little off topic here, so
So-
let's discuss the resolution we're going to vote on, and does anybody else have a comment on the resolution? If not, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Cindy,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy,
No.
Kurt.
Yes.
Okay, resolution 2015-02 passes 5-1 with member Strand opposed. And we will go into executive session at the end of the regular meeting to discuss which lots we want to bid on and the bid amount. So, okay, consideration of professional services contract with Horion Associates Incorporated. Entertain a motion to authorize the borough to go into to negotiate this contract, or to go forward with this contract with Horion Associates.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's moved by member Walhooter, seconded by member Greger to consider professional services, the contract with Harai and Associates. So, any discussion?
Just a question, when we get into the point of actually construction, does that come out of the harbor fund?
Glow?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it would, yeah. And it sounds like, well, what they're going to do is tear down the old approach to the North Harbor before it falls down, and, excuse me, use salvage material from demolition of former projects around the city to build up the platform and place to store the oil dumpster and park vehicles, and so it sounds like a good idea to me. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
and Jay.
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. We'll go into a professional services contract with Harai and Associates. Communications, we've been getting some communications from Representative Christ Tompkins' office about the herbicide situation, and maybe we'll, without reading it, sounds like he asked legal opinion from someone at the state, and they said, yeah, a borough can pass an ordinance that doesn't allow the spraying of herbicides on their property, but then if it conflicts with the state's projects or whatever you want to call them, then you might get sued. So I guess we'll have to see, when we get more information from them, how we want to proceed on that. But that's just so the public, I know there's a lot of people interested in that, and that's public knowledge, isn't it, Kathy, the correspondence from Christ Tompkins' office? So, Bob?
You might also, he has introduced a bill
Right.
that would provide for public comment related to any kind of herbicide spraying along roadsides, particularly if it had to do with any kind of water pollution, any effect on salmon streams and or on, I'll call it roof catchment, but on private water systems.
Okay, so he is trying to move that forward, which is good. So anybody else have any communications they'd like to share?
I just wanted to pass on one
Sandy.
thing, and it was a verbal communication. I talked to Sandy Dixon today, and I've had conversations with some of the fire department folks before, and it's in the manager's report that they're low on numbers of volunteers, and that they had to cancel an upcoming training because they didn't have enough people to participate in the EMT training. It's not just an issue of the number of people on the fire department, it's an issue of availability of the people on the fire department. And I would encourage anybody who had an interest to give Sandy a call or Ryan Weldy, and they can even email an application and tell you more about it. So just wanted to put that word out there. It certainly is an important service in
Yes,
the
it is.
borough.
Any other communications the assembly members have? I've got a note, I better check it. Oh, I guess I covered it. Recognitions, anybody have any recognitions? No, seeing none, that moves us to discussion on a local ordinance to address marijuana sales, cultivation, manufacturing, testing, etc. I asked to put this on the, I had it put on the agenda so we could start our discussion. I know it varies all over the state what different municipalities have done, and Ketchikan Borough addressed it, their borough government, and they came up with some ideas that they want to move forward, like no edibles and not located near churches or schools. And I know the state has the legislative session, they're going to address it and come up with their rules, but I personally feel it's important that as a borough we start working through this process. And I don't know if the assembly thinks we should form a committee to try to get input from the community, or if we just keep having it on the meetings and keep discussing it as it progresses. But I think just because it was voted to be legal, I don't know that people in our community want to have marijuana stores on Main Street. Maybe they want it to be legal and distributed through liquor stores. But I just think we need to have a public discussion on this. So that's why I put it on the agenda. Any other discussion? Now that I've said my piece. Cindy?
I asked Kathy to get a copy of the Juneau city and borough ordinance, which basically is just trying to hold things at bay until the state comes up with some regulations, because obviously there's some things that need to shake out before people can actually engage in cultivation or testing or manufacturing of product. And so I just am suggesting this as a possible ordinance that we could adopt that basically says we're not going to zone anything for any marijuana-related cultivation or testing or product manufacturing until that time that the state has developed regulations that we can tie into. And it gives us a little breathing room.
Okay, any other comments?
Touching on what you said, Mr. Mayor, about either having a committee involved or having just having it on the agenda as a constant discussion topic, I guess I'd be inclined to keep it on the General Assembly agenda, similarly, I guess, to like the PAPKEYS discussion was for the last several months. Give people time to formulate thoughts, bring them forward, let it percolate with people, and they can formulate their thoughts as they see fit. Because, yeah, this is not an issue that is going to be resolved overly quickly in the state, I don't think. So it gives us time to keep the dialogue open, I guess. My 2 cents.
Okay. Any other comments, Kurt?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea that we're going to start to have this conversation, but I think we're way too early in rules and regulations that the state still wants to come up with. If we want to have it, that's fine. But I mean, I really think that it could be game changers, on the state level, and so might as well wait and see. I'm in favor of a wait and see sort of, what's going to happen to the legislature and what committees they're going to form and what they're going to come up with. So.
Bob, you have a comment on this topic?
Yeah, I think we ought to leave it on the agenda and allow people to come forward, and make comment to us, just like we had in the others, because I'd like to, the more information we have out there and the more thoughts we get, I think the better we can be in the long run here. Whether we want to put it on not do anything till later on, I think that's up for grabs. I'm not totally in favor of Junos, but I'm not against it either. I have to think about it some more.
Yeah.
But I do think we need to have more public dialogue on it.
Yeah, I think we do need to have more public discussion on it. It was passed by a pretty good margin, percentage-wise, statewide and in our district.
Right.
Coopernoff and Petersburg area especially. But, I think as it progresses, I would like as much public comment as we can get, and maybe even once we come up with an idea or a plan, I don't know if it should go to the voters, or maybe just take their public comments, but there's 7 of us that are going to make, if it's an assembly decision, to make the decision how this is going to be affect our community for years, or our borough. I would like to ask the chief what his thoughts are on it. Do you think there's any reason why we would have to do, I don't know if you've seen the Juno thing, it basically just doesn't let anything progress until state comes up with some ideas, or do you think we have to do something like that to protect ourselves, or it's already illegal, isn't it, at this point?
Well, I think we should prepare. I think it's, right now things are pretty tangled, and it's not clear what the state regulations are going to be. But I think we should prepare, and I would encourage the Assembly to get educated on some of the concerns there. Off the top of my head, some of the concerns I would have would be safety inspections for indoor grow operations. I've been in a few hundred commercial marijuana grows, and we need to make sure that if we're going to allow them, they need to be set up safely, and their fire hazards are reduced. In the recent training I had, Washington and Colorado both are running into issues, some pros, some cons. One of the common issues they had was in the consumables, concentrates in consumables. They've had a couple of overdoses by young children who have eaten an entire cookie where a serving size may be an eighth. A child only sees, a cookie like they're accustomed to eating. So I think it is preliminary, but we need to educate ourselves so we can make good decisions when the time comes.
Okay, thank you for your input. Any other input by Assembly? Kurt?
I'm just going to assume that Juno's probably already had, people applying for permits, to try to get ahead of it. But so far, I don't think any of us have heard of anybody trying to apply yet. So that's
true.
That's just a thought.
Good point. It's a issue we need to keep on top of, though. So maybe we can have it on the, just to gather public comment, we could have it on the agenda, Kathy?
Sure, would you like that into the public hearing? That way people could come in and say their piece and leave.
There you go, it's the start of the meeting, they don't have to listen to the whole meeting and be bored to tears. That's why you're the head clerk. Yes,
Just a
Bob.
question. We have a process going now on a new land use plan, for the area. Would it be of any benefit, or would it help us in any way to put that as part of the questions that are out to the public, and to put that in the mix? Just a question.
I noticed that the comment period for the comprehensive plan has been extended till the end of the month. Did I read that correct?
Is that?
Yeah. So, I mean, and there's a room in there for comments, if people wanted to make a comment to the comprehensive plan, what do you have in mind? I mean, just...
Well, I was in Colorado too, and I agree with the chief. That was one of the issues. The other one was where the parlors. They actually have parlors, or places you can sell it, just like a liquor store or so forth. The issue in the communities that I was in there was where those were located. It was a major issue in a couple of the communities. Was it put in a residential zone, or it was in some of the communities there was a real fight over that, where it was, or somebody wanted to do it in their own residence, etc. And that became a real issue in the community. And so I think that probably needs to be addressed, fairly quickly as part of that process, as I would see it.
Okay. Cindy?
And just one more comment on Juneau's ordinance. We could still have an open conversation and adopt Juneau's ordinance. All Juneau's ordinance is saying is that they're not going to entertain, they won't act on a permit if they receive it. They're not going to do anything with applications pertaining to marijuana establishments, that it just establishes a period of time where they're essentially in a holding pattern. And so I don't know that we have a mechanism if somebody did turn in a permit, we don't know what we would do with it.
Yeah.
Or if somebody decided to sell a product, I don't know that we have a way to address that. And this would at least put a hold on things until there were more regulations in place to make some sense of things.
Well, we can, Jay? No, it's fine.
Question for Chief Swihart, if I may. Sure. Just touching on what you said there, Member Lagodakis. If someone were selling product from a storefront today, check me if I'm wrong, but that would be most certainly illegal given the current climate at this point, with lack of permitting, etc. Yes?
Yes.
Clearly, outside the bounds of the law at this point.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Another question of clarification for Chief Swihart. What happens on February 28th?
I don't know. The voters have approved this, and I think it's going to take the state some time to establish the system to deal with it. And I think you may see some upcoming legislation on that. I don't think the state knows.
Agreed.
Right.
I remember at the AML in Anchorage, there was a law firm that gave a presentation, and staying out of hot water, I believe it was, and I got copies, we all looked at that, and I believe what the intent was of the vote in October was to make it legal in your residence. And I think that's it. But you can't buy it or transport it, so does it just materialize? I don't know, but so I don't know if growing is legal or not. Yeah, so but anyway, yeah, there is some concern whether we have any liability, or as a borough, I don't know that we would if it's illegal to grow, sell, whatever you want to say it. Kurt?
I mean, just a point of clarification here. The state of Alaska's constitution already allows you to have up to 1 ounce in your possession in your own home and 26 plants. Come February 28th, Nancy maybe help me with some of this, it's 1 ounce and 6 plants?
No, it's I've seen 6 plants fork, which can be mature, I think. And I've also heard 26 plants.
Which is the current protection underneath the Constitution right now as an individual, right? in the state of Alaska.
Right. I have no idea.
Yeah, so I'm sure that this February 28th was to be able to get it into distribution, and taxes. I'm sure that's what that was all about.
I think that's not till 2016 when that'll be allowed, but anyway, like the chief said, doesn't know. So I guess we need to keep an eye on it. So maybe we would want to address an ordinance like this, but if it's clearly illegal, if someone's trying to sell marijuana on Main Street, they're going to get arrested.
Right, but there's always going to be black market pot available, and if we want to control it at some level, we're going to have to control it by allowing certain actions,
Yeah, that's
activities.
This is just the tip of the iceberg, our first discussion. I'm
So-
sure we'll have lots of
I
interesting
think,
discussions.
I think we need to be real careful about putting too many moratoriums on too many things, or it's going to go right back underground and we won't be able to collect any taxes on it.
Well, we could bring this up again, since it was just brought to our attention this evening, we could put this on the next agenda under a discussion item, since our, sounds like it's going to be an ongoing dialogue for us.
I think we should give it at least as much time as we gave Papkeys, and we should ask all the right questions
I agree, yeah.
instead of just saying, do you want to do it? We should ask whether, how much, as far as children getting overdosed by eating cookies, no matter what the borough does, if parents don't keep track of their cookies, their children are going to eat them.
That's true.
So,
Okay,
Just one last comment here, and then
Okay.
I'm going to let this die. I mean, that-
for now. We've only been here an hour, Kurt.
Yeah, well, I mean, we haven't discussed this for an hour. But, I mean, at first blush, there's no mechanism now for people to apply for anything.
No.
So,
Correct.
I mean, this might be just putting the cart before the horse. But anyway, I'll read this over, and like I say, I'm not opposed to, passing some ordinance, just to let people know that we're in a holding pattern.
Right.
So, yeah.
Kathy, I don't know if this is an idea the Assembly would agree with. Is it worth the question, to the attorney, whether he thinks we need to do anything at this point? I don't think we do to keep ourselves out of hot water, but
I can check with them.
I mean, it's probably, hopefully it doesn't cost $300 or anything.
Just to see.
Would it be worthwhile at the next session to ask the chief to make a 15-minute presentation on the law, or so we put us all in this kind of the same frame, so to speak, of the law and what we can't do, and just the discussion you had here a few minutes ago.
What the vote in October actually means we can and can't do?
Well, yeah, exactly.
And current
So that we're all on the same kind of page.
You think that information is fairly accessible, Chief?
Well, I could certainly research it and prepare something. I'm not sure I have the answers, though, or I would be able to come up with the answers. I think, again, this is just kicking off, and there are so many questions. The state hasn't decided what the specific regulations are going to be and how they're going to, build the infrastructure to deal with it. So, yes, I could put together something on it, but you may be better served hearing from the attorney than me.
Okay. Did you see the information from the November Alaska Municipal League meeting in Anchorage? How to stay out of hot water was the topic. If not, I might still have a copy, or Kathy could maybe get it to the chief. It had some good information given by an attorney, to his perspective of it anyway. So, all right. Any more discussion, or are we going to move off this topic tonight? Okay. Okay, with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. And the purpose of the executive session is to discuss which lots in the CDUC subdivision the borough will make sealed purchase bids on, and what dollar amount should be bid on each lot. And we'll go into executive session and discuss that. And when we come back out, we'll go back into open session, and if we make a decision, we'll give that information. If we don't come up with anything, will be how it is. So anyway, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for that reason.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do we have to vote to do this? We do.
Roll call, yes,
Yeah, roll call, I thought so, yep.
Nancy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
and Shay.
Yes.
Okay, voted 6-0 to go into executive session for that reason, and we will come back in